just watching light the apartment on fire outside.
Light the apartment on fire.
We've not shown you that, have we?
No, I don't think so.
Next time, baby. So continuing the horror spiral downwards into the abyss, into the below.
That is our lives, yes.
For another 4 weeks.
Yes.
Including this one. Yes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The OG. He was the original. The original slasher.
Wait.
I've come to accept that, even though this debate has gone on for a number of years. Mm-hmm. But some people still attribute it to being John Carpenter's Halloween. Yeah. Saying that this isn't technically a slasher by the whatever definition. But, there's a million different official definitions.
Yeah, you can always find a way to
loophole it and take it around. Yeah. But I've come to accept that it is.
But
the first original slasher.
Regardless, Leatherface is before Michael Myers.
You could also kind of argue Psycho as a slasher. Yeah. In that case, it's absolutely technically the first. So I don't know. It's take that as you will. Mm-hmm. I need the tea, the caffeine.
You need the caffeine. All right. Yeah, 1974.
Throwing it back, Tobe Hooper's first massive blip. This is the one that caught him a lot of notoriety. Tobe Hooper, we talked about last year with his other big success, Poltergeist.
Yes.
Poltergeist has been coming up a lot this year. I didn't intend for that to happen, but it
we
is.
just keep talking.
It's like three weeks in a row we've referenced Poltergeist. Probably more than that.
We have. Well, I mean, all good things are influenced by other good things from the past, and vice versa. You can't help it.
It's inevitable, I suppose. Mm-hmm. This is a good one. This one scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it.
This one did?
Yeah,
the original one. Yeah.
The OG.
I saw it backwards. Like I saw the remake first from like
2003.
Yeah, there you go. I saw that one first, not knowing that it was a remake at the time.
Interesting. They did do a good job with it.
Yeah. And then came to this like years later once I realized, it's a remake.
Yeah. Platinum Dunes tried a number of different things with remakes. I'd say that was probably their best of all of them. Yeah. Except for maybe Friday the 13th. I do like their Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, that series, I mean, that's definitely has its charm.
Yeah, it's for a remake. Actually, I'm going to shelve this whole topic for another week because this is getting into the territory of that episode.
Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, we were saying this credited or one of definitely launching the slasher genre or at the very least being a part of that beginning.
For sure. I mean, it also like John Carpenter's Halloween cites it as inspiration. Tom Savini worked on this as well as Friday the 13th. Mm-hmm. Tom Savini is a legend. Mm-hmm. Never let anybody tell you otherwise. So much so, they've made a massive mural of him here in Pittsburgh near his school.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah, you've not seen this?
I didn't. I've not seen this.
Oh, man. If I'd have known I'd have had the picture ready, I'd have sent it to you. But yeah, it's phenomenal. It's him. He's got all the memorabilia around him. Fantastic. It's another great... There's a whole documentary on Tom Savini called Smoke and Mirrors. I own a copy of it. Definitely, if you've not seen it, check it out. It's fantastic. Okay. That man's life is fascinating. And he, again, Pittsburgh native right here. Yep. He's a legend in the industry, and so many amazing things in storytelling in the film world have come out of Pittsburgh. It's phenomenal to have grown up here.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a what's the word I'm looking for?
A hub.
A hub, yes. A cradle of not just filmmaking, but definitely creativity, I feel. Yeah. And artistic talents.
Yeah, for sure. It's you kind of wonder like why here, but I guess we're like in the center of a lot of things. I don't maybe something with that, but
that I don't know. That could be a discussion for another day.
Yeah, it could be. I could fall down that spiral.
Right now, we got to fall down the
correct spiral
of Leatherface.
Leatherface and his saws of chains.
Which I'm going to fall down a very quick spiral.
Do it.
Is Leatherface, is that why there's Taserface in Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh, God, I hope that's what it is.
Is he like making a Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of nod there?
I would not say no. I don't know enough about it.
I don't know. That just kind of came to mind, just the way I said Leatherface. But yes,
Taserface.
You talk about an infamous character.
Like spanning decades. We've talked about a couple of things like holding the test of time, like Twilight Zone and a few other things in recent weeks. It's nuts how popular this it's now a franchise. It is a full-fledged franchise. The sequels to this are nowhere near the quality of the first, in my opinion. But I do love my crappy popcorn horror, so I still watch and enjoy the sequels.
Well, I think this one too, Texas Chainsaw, has that same sort of grit and determination behind it that like Evil Dead did, the original one, when they shot it. When Sam Raimi did that like, you know what, we're going to do this. We're just going to make this movie and we're going to try to do it to the best of our ability.
It has like a visceral nature. Both of them have like a visceral nature to them.
Yes, that's the perfect word. Visceral, yes.
And it's like the way it was shot. It's like in the 70s, like things were just starting to realize you could pop the camera off of the tripod and like run with it. They didn't have Steadicam in the 70s, but like DPs were kind of figuring out that like it was a style choice to do that. Yeah, it's going to come out shaky and look, as some people would describe, as not good, but it's a style choice.
Well, yeah, you're in between that. The golden age of the studio system of Hollywood is long over at this point, and this is 3 years before Star Wars comes out.
Yeah,
and Jaws, 2 years or a year or two before Jaws. So the modern studio system has yet to be born in the one that we now are currently in. So this is that in between phase of where like people are kind of rewriting the rules a little bit and like what you can do with film and like how to shoot it, what, sound, a lot of that.
Yeah. And like people were just trying stuff, and this is a prime example of it, because there's a lot of like unorthodox techniques thrown into this, but work phenomenally. From a marketing standpoint, this movie was way ahead of its time because it pulled a lot of the same strategies that like Cloverfield and stuff used, like making it like a Blair Witch, making it seem like it was a real event. And
it has that documentary like approach.
And like that opening crawl states that it was a real event that occurred in Texas. So people went around thinking that, this really was based on a true story. So it's kind of wild how it spurred like a lot of legend status of the subject matter. Yeah.
One thing too, when we can get into that, do we want to like just talk real quick about like, the story itself for those who have never seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre or have never even heard of Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Yeah, so there's a group of, on the younger side, friends kind of road tripping, and I believe the main character, her brother, is the one who's wheelchair bound.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, he has one of the more comical deaths in the movie.
He's not the one that's hung. No, who's the one that gets. Well, I always remember the meat hook kill.
Yeah, that one definitely sticks out because it's like a 1-2 punch.
I think that
she gets hung and he leaves her there and then comes back for it later. Yeah. There's so many moments with the main character. She tries to escape in like the middle part of the film, runs out onto the porch and is grabbed by Leatherface and dragged back into the house.
Yeah.
Obviously her running through the woods, all kinds of things, but that imagery of this movie, like it sticks out.
But yeah, like in a nutshell though, it has that similar setup, the story of a group of friends on just a road trip in rural Texas.
But before anything really tried that, so it was kind of a pioneer of like obviously there were things around like that, but
and they encounter a family of psychopaths, cannibals, while traveling through rural Texas, and one of the members of this family is Leatherface, who has a chainsaw. Obviously, that's his weapon of choice, and wears a mask made out of human skin that's obviously not his own. I always took it as I assume it's other people they've captured.
Yes.
And that he,
according to later installments, if you take them as canon.
But in the original, I don't think they ever explain it, right?
There's a lot left up to implication and, interpretation and inferring, like in between, scenes and edits and stuff. Like I think there's actually one of the characters is killed off screen, if memory serves.
Yeah. I mean, this is essentially where the chainsaw horror trope, I think, comes from. If anything, I feel like we can all agree on that. Like, you go to like your haunted houses now around the area and stuff. The chainsaw sound, the revving of the engine.
Last time I promise.
But yes, the classic, that thing that now has become like just the part of the nomenclature of Halloween and horror.
Yeah. Well, you think about like every theme park's Halloween fair that you go to, like they have somebody running around with a chainsaw.
Yeah,
every haunted house,
yeah.
It's like you said, it's a common theme. It's a common thread.
It's like sort of the bread and butter, or like it's just kind of something that you kind of throw with it. It has it's there.
It has like in terms of like a haunted house, it has the sight, the sound, and smoke steam kicking out of the chainsaw. So it's just like it's all around a win. A haunted house win.
Yeah. So this definitely I would struggle to think of something else that put the chainsaw trope on the map, especially for the horror aspect of it. Because I don't think, even before this, I don't think you would have had anything like that. Certainly not in the old studio system. I can't imagine you would have something like this at all.
No, it's definitely it's a clear 70s cutting edge.
Yeah,
cutting edge. But yeah, like the broad span of characters, putting the camera in the van, like a lot of like techniques that for now don't seem super cutting edge, but for the 70s were a big deal.
Yeah, it's hard to like. You always have to like when you're looking at something older, you have to put yourself in the shoes of what was going on at that time.
Yeah, and
these are just things you just didn't do when it came to like a bigger movie production. You just did not. You always had to have like you said, the camera always had to be on the tripod. You go back and look at like classic Hollywood things, like just like Wizard of Oz. I'm just trying to think of something completely in the complete opposite direction of Chainsaw Massacre.
You had to have the tripod on a camera on the tripod, and you had to have the actors in the asbestos when it was in the time.
Yeah, exactly. or occasionally you would have it where it's on the dolly or it's on the jib, the rig. If you wanted to do like something like that, they did do that. But it was all, there was still that blend of theater aspect to old Hollywood and that classical theater, having, keeping everything on the fourth wall side.
Yeah.
Whereas movies like Texas Chainsaw, and correct me if I'm wrong here, definitely broke that rule by taking the camera, like you said, into the car, or having the prototype version of a Steadicam.
Yeah. Not to get too sidetracked, but the Steadicam came into the arena around the time of The Shining.
Okay.
So it's
I should say whatever they would have done, the progenitor, to what would eventually become Steadicam shots.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to give like a sense of time frame, but like you're not wrong. Like there were definitely people trying things like the weighted side rigs and stuff. Like there were all kinds of like the obviously like earliest stages, not a gimbal, but it was like what people used in the slate of a gimbal. It was just basically like a sled with like a pole that had weights on the bottom of it to kind of just give some sense of stabilization. But yeah, this is where we're way ahead of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Even by Kubrick standards, who like kicked the Steadicam in the door, we were a good 6 years ahead of that. So
yeah,
and they were even Kubrick's rigs were like very workshop slapped together. Yeah, like they were stuff built in a garage.
But yeah, in terms of the film and what it did, like I said, you have to put yourself back in the mindset of what's going on at this time.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think, the equivalent, I guess, would be like today if like someone figured out how to do teleportation or something, something so just like drastic that you just like, whoa, this is like completely new and out of left field.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think from just a writing standpoint is, I mean, the story is fairly straightforward and simple. That's not a knock on the story, but you kind of need it to be simple because essentially you want the action beats, you want the action to play out. So
I think that's partially why so many first installments are so good. is because they can be very simple. As you like peel back the layers of a horror world, it's like the shock value is kind of gone. You kind of gotta up the ante, as it were. It's like, but with the first installment, it's kind of like you're allowed to like explore that world a little bit.
Well, yeah, and two, like if it's something brand new, no one either knows what to expect or is even expecting anything to begin with.
Audience expectations, I say.
Yes, but yeah, it's having that. You have to have You talked about how you have the characters and the deaths. Like that's, you have to almost, this is going to be a weird comparison, but there almost has to be a almost like a musical quality to how you're going to design how each character is going to meet their end.
Yeah.
Because like when you have a musical, you can't play the same song over and over again in each song break. If like in Lion King, just the first thing that came to my mind, if you only played Circle of Life the whole way through and didn't have all the other songs, like Can't Wait to Be King, Be Prepared, what have you would kind of feel gypped a little bit. You'd be like, well, it's the same song over and over.
Yeah.
You have to have that variety. Same kind of principle applies here with this but just in a much more morbid and violent way, in that you have to make sure that one of your main villains, Leatherface, is, crafting different ways of taking out his victims. Otherwise, if everyone, even though it's in the title, if everyone just got hacked up by a chainsaw every 2 seconds in the same way, it would lose its impact, I feel.
Well, yeah, it's like even as it goes forward into the 80s, if we're looking at the time frame here, like Halloween kind of was a pivot point for that kind of thing, and it made the kills more interesting. Like the kills became a central focal point of why the movie had intrigue. It's like the kill, like as sadistic as it is, the kills were kind of funny and fun to watch. And that brought about Friday the 13th and Freddy, which were basically just laughing at people dying in hilarious ways.
Yes, and Freddy especially, just because of Robert Englund's performance.
Yeah, so it is interesting.
But yes, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre does take itself seriously for the majority of it, I'd say.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how they spurred all of this on, because you really can boil it back to them. Though obviously there were things that we were saying last week, it's you can trace a genesis of an idea backwards kind of crazily, but I think in the instance of this really did kick a door in for the horror genre. It tried so many wild things and put such a honestly like a horror buffet on the table.
Yeah,
both figuratively and literally. Is kind of wild how many different things they brought to the table.
Well, and two, I think the story of it and the themes it explores, obviously violence is a big one, but that I really like what you have here with that disintegration of traditional values and like this sort of sense of decay in society going on. And it is definitely reflected in the way that it's shot too, and the sort of like, obviously it's shot on older film, but like the graininess of how everything looks when you watch the original.
Well, even like the amount of sharpness that they've been able to pull out in like more recent restorations of it, it's a testament to how well it was originally produced, how much detail there is, how well exposed it was. It's a credit to Tobe Hooper and his whole team. They visually crafted this movie perfectly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the family. How screwed up this family is, because it's a nightmare to endure. As Sally gets trapped, Sally being our main character, as she gets trapped in like confines of the house, it's almost like a prison. She is trying to escape. Like she come across several rooms that are just each more horrifying than the last, until finally coming upon Leatherface, and that's where the real terror of the movie is unleashed.
Yeah.
But we see the skull and bones room. We see all the different various elements. Like I think she comes across a skin lamp at one point. Mm-hmm. All different kinds of just like subtle ways that like we slowly realize that we're in a hellhole, and this family is severely, severely demented.
Oh yes, 100%. And you talking about like influences before, I just thought of going back to last year, Resident Evil, the original game. Like this is Texas Chainsaw is a huge influence to that. And even so, in the point that one of the more newer iterations, Resident Evil 7, literally has almost an identical setup to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, except rather than being Texas, you're in Louisiana in the bayou somewhere. And it stays true to the Resident Evil roots, but it borrows heavily from the style and lore that and look to it that Texas Chainsaw Massacre created here in the 70s.
And it comes full circle. Texas Chainsaw is now producing a video game series.
Oh, I did not know that.
It's very much in the vein of the Friday the 13th game that came out a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very multiplayer based. It's like one person gets to be the killer. Everybody else is trying to escape. And then, each round it switches and randomizes who the killer is. I think other games have had a game mode like this, but the Friday the 13th game kind of started it. But yeah, it's been getting a lot of popularity and it's been doing really well. Like I think that style of game is just crazy popular.
Yeah.
As far as like a multiplayer experience, it's kind of a fun concept.
No, absolutely.
Because everybody wants to be the killer. Everybody just wants to chop up teenagers.
I guess so. But getting back to the Texas Chainsaw here, one thing I totally forgot is, I guess technically, the on screen, even though this portrays violence, I guess you would say compared to like other things I've seen today, this would be tame in some aspects.
Yeah, it's like that first installment. You think of Texas Chainsaw, you think of gore and blood, but honestly, that like first installment,
you would automatically think of something like Saw or I'm trying to think what else.
My mind kind of goes to the Platinum Dunes remake and prequel remake.
Yeah,
and honestly, they're not like they're so much gorier than this first one was. Like the first one hardly shows any actual killing; it's largely implicit.
Yeah.
Which is weird. You don't think of it that way, but that's exactly what it is if you watch it back.
No, yeah, definitely. It's always that question of relying more on suggestion and letting your mind fill in the gaps. And what's the better way? What's scarier? Is it scarier if I just show it to you outright, like something like Hostel?
Yeah,
some really just over the top gore in that, or is it's definitely more off-putting, I'll say, if I show it to you, like, and you're just like, ugh,
absolutely,
like sicken. Like if you're going for a sickening factor, okay, absolutely, then you show it.
I'm going for gasps.
I thought you were about to be like, I'm going for gas. I'm like, what?
I'll be right back. I'm going for gas. Okay. No, I got plenty right here.
I thought you were actually leaving there then. Like, I'll be right back. I thought like something happened.
I must leave right now.
Let's leave right now. But yes, if you want that sick to your stomach feeling, then you show the gore. That's where gore comes in. But to make it scary, or if you want that like disturbing or thrill factor, sometimes I would say relying more on the unseen is probably a better route.
I want credit for it. I didn't go for the joke this time.
What was the joke?
You said moron.
Oh. All right, you get credit for that one.
I got exactly one credit.
One credit, absolutely.
Yeah, this is one I can't really say enough about. I could go off on it for a long amount of time, but I think it's that the visual style is what sticks with me the most. That's what I always come back to. It is cut very tightly though. Mm-hmm. I can't say that much. I think that that's a credit to Tobe Hooper, obviously not to take away from the talents of the editing, but you look at something like Poltergeist and this, you see a natural progression of pacing and understanding, and some directors you can tell when they don't understand that kind of. Mm-hmm. There's a natural progression with him where he continued to get better over time from already high points in those categories. So it's interesting to watch an auteur, a filmmaker progress in such.
Well, yeah, and I didn't realize Hooper was actually a co-writer of the original script.
Yeah, I always found that interesting too.
Because that's always tough. I feel like to direct and write, it can sometimes, you have to be good at it. Like, essentially, is what I say. There are a few people who can do it well, I feel.
Well, the problem is it's not that they're counterintuitive.
No.
But it's like you have to know your story very well to craft it well, but also you have to be able to vocalize and communicate it well, which sometimes are not easy things to do simultaneously.
No, and you have to be willing to, as a director, you have to be willing to hand over some of the tasks and challenges that need to be accomplished to other people in the cast and the crew. Otherwise, you'll never get it made. And that's one thing, when you're writing something, because I've talked about it before, the creation of writing something, putting something on a blank page, it's like, it's that pure creation factor. And you're just like, oh yeah. But then when you start to take it from your mind and that code, encode it onto the script, and you start to shoot it, you're going to start to see things that, okay, we got to fix and tweak and maybe just cut this scene out completely. If you don't have a big budget, which, holy hell, modest budget of $140,000 for this. Like damn. Even by the 70s standards, that's not a lot.
Yeah, like it's kind of crazy what they did. Like obviously it's a single location other than the van, but even considering that, like they did a lot of night scenes, and night scenes in the 70s were lighting and film stock complicated. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of money right there. That's honestly probably where a lot of the budget is, beyond Savini and the makeup teams, the production design. Like that house took a lot of rigging and a lot of doing to make into what it was. So, like Insidious, this one's a feat of the budget.
Yeah. Yeah. It shot, you said, it was outside of Austin, Texas. And that desolate setting is definitely it really amps up the theme of the story. Like you feel also too, it kind of solves, one of the big things of the haunted house questions, like, why don't you just leave the house? Like, get out.
Yeah.
In this sense, you can, but there's where you're going to, like, you're kind of almost like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Where are you going to go?
Like you can obviously you need to still get out, but then you also have to get away, and it's who knows where. And this is before no cell phones, no GPS. This is the 70s. You're like, if you get out, then you've got the elements to fight as well. Yeah. And not to mention, they're just going to come after you.
Yeah, it's like, that's the thing, is it's like, you have to escape the people, and like you also have to escape the house, because you consider in the context of this first installment, like she's unfamiliar with this house. She has to navigate and get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not to mention cloud that all with the terror of the situation that you're in. It's easy to say that from an outside perspective. That's what I always like. I'm one of those people that's always like, get the out of there. What are you doing in the house? Get out. But like you consider it in a realm of trauma and terror, you're not thinking clearly, so you have to like cut that in with it a little bit, I think, because it's like how clear-headed would you really be like in a situation like that?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's put into consideration with a lot of movies like Texas Chainsaw. It's like, how let's try to think about it realistically. How clear-headed would a person be in one of the most terrifying situations?
Well, yeah. I don't know how you have hardly any time to react, but yeah, what would be going through your mind if you're in such a situation?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of things to consider in something like that, because it's a situation that very few people find themselves in. So
yeah, and they definitely wanted to keep this on a realistic style, right? Like the look to it.
Oh, definitely.
So they did a lot then with just natural lighting, right? Like,
oh yeah, I think all the sunset stuff, the evening shots, like those were all like vast successes of scheduling.
Yeah,
being able to get exactly what they needed in that very limited Texas magic hour.
Which is, and you are the master of when it comes to cinematography and camera work. So what?
Oh, I don't know about that, but
well, compared to me, you are. So you can't argue me on that one. But
fair enough. But
what do you find harder to work with, natural lighting or artificial? Like, I mean, obviously both have their challenges, but
yeah, it's like I would say this. It's like you need both. No matter what production you're on, there's aside from like a volume stage situation, there's no such thing as all artificial lighting on a project.
Okay.
And even then, you're 100% emulating, exterior light or, whatever environment that you're in. So it's even that I take to a degree, even though it's completely artificial. It's like it's all about emulating those types, like Mandalorian, for example.
No, so absolutely.
There's no such thing as no daylight. There are no natural lights.
No, yeah, no. I'm asking. Maybe I should. I'm asking then. do you find that one's more difficult to work with than the other? Like,
no, not necessarily. I think like you said, each has its own challenges, but in the particular areas of natural light, I find that to be the most, like, working within natural light, augmenting it with artificial light, I think is the best way to work, because you're working outwardly from what's there and what feels natural.
Yeah.
So I think it's a tricky balance, and it's like how much do I add, how much do I use? But I think the more natural you can make things feel is always the goal. So I think that's where a lot of that comes from.
No, I can remember, what was it? Well, you would have been the year next, but I can remember in one of our classes, like our early freshman year class, I think we had to watch, is it Days of Heaven or something? I think Tom Cruise is.
I do like Days of Heaven.
I know isn't that one that's like everything is shot using natural light, like even firelight, like they didn't use any electricity for that movie.
It's been a minute.
But I think that was the reason. But yes, maybe I'll have to give that another try, because I'll just tell you, I was not in the frame of mind to watch that.
I feel like there's been a lot of movies like that for me. It's like I didn't get the hype, but I was like, I thought that was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Which again, I go back to my argument. That's fine. You can, the argument is no, it doesn't. There's no reason to have the argument, I guess, necessarily, or no, not to not have the argument, but the argument can be, and then it can just be left. It's like saying, it'd be like trying to argue someone saying that, like, I hate trees, they're dumb.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well,
like, why do you care what I think?
Okay. As long as you're not going down and trying to chop every single tree on the planet.
Oh, I
guess you're okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to report you then if you're gonna do that.
Try and stop me.
Take all your chainsaw and your gas. You won't be able to.
It all comes full
circle. Speaking of chainsaws, let's talk about the sound a little bit in this. With again, I didn't know Hooper did the score for this. So he was John Carpenter before John Carpenter, then, I guess, even, as well, like you were saying.
To a degree, yeah.
I mean,
and he later got that Spielberg money, so.
Yeah, that's sweet Disney
Spielberg.
money. Spielberg money, I'm sorry.
Disney wouldn't make Poltergeist.
Yeah, like I did not realize that he was part of or at least helped with designing the score for it. But this uses a lot of what we've talked about before, diegetic sound kind of playing off. Kind
of in the same vein of them using natural light. It was like they wanted to live in the world. They wanted to feel the tactile nature of it. They wanted to put the audience in that world as much as they could.
Which again,
and that all goes along with it.
Yeah, again goes back to that. That was very different for the time, at least in the era that this is coming out of.
Yeah,
you didn't. I mean, it's really easy. Like I said, literally watch like a scene from Wizard of Oz, and then watch a scene from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you'll see like the differences in styles. Like, obviously, they're very two different story-wise and tone and genre, but you will see a big difference in terms of, filmmaking and storytelling, different styles.
Sorry, I found a squeak in my chair that I haven't heard before.
No, anyway, but something too I want to talk about here real quick. I thought this was interesting. You have in here the Sally's character, our main character, our protagonist, her arc representing a shift in horror film tropes at the time.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, you always had that, or even just in not just necessarily in horror, but just in film and storytelling in general. You always had the damsel in distress or the helpless female victim. But by putting the focus on Sally and her struggle for survival and like facing down Leatherface, it's that definitely is a critique of gender roles, especially, you're in the mid 70s, everything going on at the time, Vietnam is still happening, or almost, Vietnam I think is still going on the time this comes out, if my history is correct.
Yeah, and ended in 1975. And so this was still in the pocket for them.
Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely something that's, there's always that, we talk about like subtext and planting those kind of like kernels deeper into the underlying bedrock of the story that you're telling, if you want to make the social commentary that you do. There's a difference by doing it through the story or if you hammer it over the head of someone, then it comes off preachy or can be misinterpreted as propaganda.
Yeah.
So when we go back to our episode on Aristotle's Poetics, thought or theme, do you want to lead something with that? Usually if you're going to lead with that, it tends to be something short, like a poem or a short story or a short film can use theme and thought as its leading aspect, because you're just going to get in and get out.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do a bigger, grander thing, full film like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you want to talk about, make social commentaries on the things going on at the time, you have to make sure that you prepare it correctly. I don't want to say disguise it, because that makes it seem like...
Well, no, it's like, it's not wrong though, because in a way you are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But, I see what you mean. It's like, maybe that's not the best way to dress it up.
But, this is definitely a commentary on American society in the 1970s. So that was,
which there was a lot to commentate on. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely.
So kudos to Tobe Hooper. He stuck around quite a while, made some cool stuff. This definitely being one of them. The vast array of characters in this, the cutting edge cinematography. Like, I can't help but just awe and gawk at the camera work in this.
Yeah, no, this is one to, and it's tough now. Like, it's interesting to think about this. Like, we mentioned this last week when I said, it's in black and white about Twilight Zone. It's like, well, yeah, but don't let that, I hope that doesn't dissuade you from watching something like Twilight Zone.
I don't.
And although this is certainly in color, right? Yeah. No,
vividly.
This is in vivid, like 70s color. Do you ever notice that, like, there's something with, like, I don't like 70s color. I can never put my finger on it, but what is it about movies made in the 70s? There's like
I think film stocks were so hot, produced so heavily, and I think, people were coming in with some really cutting edge ideas on how to process it, was what it all boils down to. I think there was a vast variety of new film stocks and stuff that had a lot of new capabilities to be pushing in that area. But, I think it's largely it was that new filmmaker boom that happened in the 70s is, I think, the biggest part of it. And people trying like weird and crazy things that the seasoned professionals wouldn't do yet is really where a lot of that came from.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Like definitely a lot of that going on in the 70s for sure. Like Easy Rider, like there was that high contrast, high saturation.
Yes, high saturation. Thank you.
There was a lot of film grain going on from like the lower grade film stocks, because people would just grab stock that they get in that. Which is tough to kind of recreate, I think, aesthetically. I was watching last night. I was watching a clip from Black Dynamite, which is based on those 70s films, and they do a good job of kind of recreating that. But I don't know. It's not 100% perfect. No.
So there's something with, I don't know. Yeah, that's these early 70s movies that just, it's much more difficult to recreate. And I've always wondered, like, is it the saturation? Is it like the film stock, like you said?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors to it, and I think, like we had mentioned in our color episode, I think there's a lot of factors that go into film versus digital and film emulation. A lot of factors to that, and there's no such thing as a perfect emulation.
Yeah,
we can get a hell damn close that like most people would never even be able to tell, but there's no such thing as a perfect.
So something that's once again kind of I always like to point out, when this first came out, mixed reviews. Obviously didn't it took time for it to gain, I guess, the following and the recognition that it has today, which is, it's always interesting. Like, is that, because I can think of a lot of movies, but I can also think of a lot of movies that are critically acclaimed, but are also not commercially acclaimed or as successful. But I think
this one was kind of shocking when it came out. People weren't ready for it.
Yeah. No, which is interesting too, to think about, given, the era that it came out in.
Yeah. But
it had mixed reviews, and then, it gained recognition going forward. And even, I lost it. Where'd it go? Oh, preserved in the National Film Registry in 1994. Yeah. That's pretty quick. That's only 20 years later.
Which is wild, right?
Yeah, no, there are tons of movies that have gone on that are probably even older than Texas Chainsaw Massacre that haven't even gotten into the National Film Registry.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Big credit. I think Tobe Hooper is a big part of that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one thing too, like, you look at, like, what's it, AFI's top 100 movies of all time. I don't know. I don't think this is on there. I haven't looked at the list in a long time now.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I could be wrong.
But this is definitely one that I would put in like top. Well, I think to say top 100, I've never been a fan of that. I've always just, I would definitely put this in the Hall of Fame or the pantheon of great films to watch through history. Just because, it's similar to how, like, when you look at sports, who's better? Who's better, Franco Harris or LaDainian Tomlinson? I don't know. I just try to pull people off the top of my head. Well, they're two different running backs, two different eras. It's kind of hard to compare. So that's why it's just we have the Hall of Fame. It's always nice to it's fun to talk about which one we think is better.
Yeah.
But
one of the big iconic things that we didn't talk about too, the Shudder sound effect in the opening crawl.
Oh yeah.
When they talk about that sound is beyond, I think more than anything of this movie is iconic. When I hear that sound, I think of Texas Chainsaw.
Yep.
That the snap of the shit.
Yep.
God, it fits with everything.
No, this is definitely influential. Again, we were saying last week when we talked about Twilight Zone, how you said it before earlier too, how you can trace the influence back to its genesis, its point of origin.
Yeah.
This is definitely one that, as we're sitting here talking, I can think of things that whether they know it or not are influenced by this. Yeah. Be it something that they watched later that came out, like Scream, for example. I can see a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Scream.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting. I think that's why I would definitely put this as a classic film to study, especially of how it was made. That we're going to pull this off. We're going to do it. And knowing that you had a very limited budget, and it's okay, how do we get this? This is definitely one of those ones that you're given you're challenged creative, the
flames on the side of my face.
Flames on the side of my face. The limitations in reality, the practicality of making sure that okay, we can only do so much. I don't have the money to get build a whole house from scratch or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it challenges you creatively and to think production wise. Okay, how can we make sure that we can tell the story we want to tell, but also get the right shots without going over budget, or how do I get,
especially in the case of a horror movie, because the idea is that they be cheap.
Yeah. It tests both sides of your brain. A project like this, you gotta think creatively, but you also gotta think economically. You gotta be. I mean, I would imagine Hooper would have had to have been somewhat of a producer as well.
Oh yeah,
on the
definitely.
Set.
You're kind of like the stopgap for that money flying out the door. So
yeah,
you're the one handling how much is being done creatively. So you're kind of controlling where the money goes to a large degree.
Mm-hmm.
So producer can chime their 2 cents in, but you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You can drive it off the cliff quicker than anybody.
But yeah, I would definitely say if you've never seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's
definitely check it out.
And it's now
it stands as one of the great creative pieces of the 70s. It's definitely worth a view.
Yeah, and we're doing it. It is now. Sorry, I swore.
Damn it, George, swear.
Swear. It's 50 years now, right?
It's been coming here for 50 years.
Or 60? How many years? What?
50 years as of last week, actually, was the original release date.
Okay. Damn. It's so hard to think that, oh my God, the 70s were 50 years ago. Not that I say that as if I was alive. I was not.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah, it's pretty wild that this one's 50 years old. I have another anniversary horror on our slate, but we'll get to that another time.
Okay.
It's been a big anniversary year. I thought it was also cool that the anniversary year of this came up the same year as we got a Beetlejuice installment, and they were both featured at HHN the same year.
Yeah, how about that?
So it's kind of wild how it all clicks together like that.
Yep, it's like poetry. They rhyme. So, I don't know. Anyway.
I love it. It's perfect.
The chainsaw sound, the revving of the engine.
Last time, I promise.